Hey everybody, welcome to another Savage Gentleman podcast. I have a pretty phenomenal guest, and I say that about a lot of our guests, and they're all pretty good. But I think you're gooder.
Really?
I think yeah. I think you've got a lot of cool stuff that we can talk about. We've been spending some time together, but this is the James Ellis.
There's more than one of me.
No, the only one. And I mean, I think people, that says enough. They know who you are.
Yeah, done.
Keep
Wrap
it moving.
Yep.
Yeah. I don't love taking a ton of time, especially when I'm on a podcast.
Yeah.
I'm like, nobody cares. Just let's talk about the things. But I think there is some relevance to a little bit of backstory, and I think hopefully this conversation will divulge some stuff. And I just like to make it organic. But just a brief overview. A relatively okay accomplishment being a world champion weightlifter, Masters Worlds, current 2022, right? That's how
Yes,
that works.
sir.
Yeah. So, I mean, a relatively strong human being.
I'm
Arguably
good
the best
at
in the
dancing
world.
with barbells, basically.
It's a dangerous game. Successful business owner, owns what I would say is probably the best fitness facility in the state of Arizona, if not the continental U.S.
Bro.
Hammer CrossFit.
Thank you.
Yeah. I've never been there, actually. But I've never worked out there, but I have worked out with
Phenomenal.
James.
Yeah.
It's the best.
Yeah.
And what I know about you and your teaching method, and what really sold me is the fact you showed me your ethos,
The mission, vision,
the mission,
values.
yeah, your value mission statement, and I was like, man, that's a lot for what people would typically consider a CrossFit gym. Like, this is something different, or at least what people's vision of CrossFit is in my mind. And like, yeah, no, you'd be hard pressed to find another place that has the attention to detail and the capability that is proven to get someone to where they want to be in the realm of fitness. So if you're in Arizona and you're not training at Hammer CrossFit, you're wrong.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I mean, I always wanted to build facilities that I would want to be a member of. And so that was really important to me. And we've talked offline a lot about just the idea of, if I can't do it the way that I would want to do it, I don't want to do it. And so, like, the gyms are really an extension of me, and I view them that way. I treat them that way, and sometimes it's hard to separate
Decouple that.
Well, the business James from the coach James, from the athlete James, from the human James.
Yeah. A lot of hats.
Yeah.
A lot of Jameses.
I told you there's more than one of me.
Or touche.
Shit, I wish there was at least.
Yeah. I would make things easier sometimes. Why do people get so butthurt about CrossFit? Like, why does CrossFit have such a terrible stigma? Because I'm sure there's people listening that have an idea in their head. They're like, oh, one of these fucking guys. And it catches a bad rap. And
Do you want me to try to catch them, or do you want me to push them away further? Because I can do both.
I don't know.
Yeah. I find people often don't have very strong negative opinions about things they understand.
Okay.
But also, I think that CrossFit has gone in the face of what a lot of traditional strength and conditioning methodology has taught for the last 30 or 40 years. And so the fact that these athletes are as successful as they are is making a lot of people have to look inward in ways that maybe they wouldn't have otherwise.
Yeah, they don't like that very much. But, I think people beat up on this idea of CrossFit because, the first rule of CrossFit is that you must talk about CrossFit. And so that gets, that's kind of a trope.
Yeah, for sure.
People beat up on, they see techniques and they don't really understand the purpose of it. And they're like, that's not a real pull-up. What do you got? You're just flailing around and doing stuff. And to some extent, I think that there is that. There are some gyms that have zero standard. It's just move hard as fast as you can. It's the Krav Maga of fitness.
You're trying to get you're trying to get under people's skin also.
Oh, I'll piss people right the fuck off.
All
What are they gonna do? Fight me? You train Krav Maga. What do you?
Oof. All right.
You know how I know you can't fight? No, that's not fair because there are some traditional martial arts, and we saw this with Jeremy at our event where it's like, oh, you're a kung fu guy. You're like, okay, cool. And in some respects, you're right. When you hear a label, you're like, well, I know what that is. Oh, you train karate? Cool. So does my 10-year-old niece.
They call it karate.
Karate. Yeah. And there are people who do things, be it Krav Maga, be it Kung Fu, be it karate, that are awful at fighting. And they will achieve some level status in that realm. But then I think there are the people that are after something different than just the name. They're after truth. And they're honest with themselves. And in that pursuit, the expression of it, regardless of the label, you would not be able to distinguish the training style. Like if you watched Jeremy hit pads like we did out in the woods, and knew nothing else about him, you'd be like, that dude can fucking fight, right? And
I was impressed.
Yeah, you would not just immediately assume that he was a kung fu guy. Mm-hmm. And there's Krav Maga that are the same way. But then there's also, a bunch of knuckleheads that are trying to do, death, no touch knockouts and shenanigans like that. So I think it's important that yes, stereotypes exist for a reason, but we also need to have the ability to look past that and evaluate something beyond just what the initial first impression may be.
Yes, and right,
yeah,
we've been using that phrase a lot this weekend, and it's actually something that I've thought a lot about in the last year or so.
Okay,
because I think that I've had the tendency to do the exact same thing, is that I will hyper focus on one modality, one type of thing, and be like, this is the way, and everything else is bullshit, or it's and what I've had to come to realize, and I think you do this in every area of your life if you're paying attention, is that there are multiple ways to get it done, and there are multiple ways to arrive at not the same place, but similar places, and there are ways to extrapolate the information that you learn from one area of focus and take it to other parts of your life and apply it and be successful there also. Yeah,
I think so. And so this is where I don't love labels and this is why part of the reason when we do these Legion events, I'm purposefully ambiguous, because if I tell people it's going to be this, they've already built a framework in their mind. There's a box that that lives in, and it's next to impossible to get beyond that. You've already built up the walls. You have that container, and I find that that's limiting, right? So if someone hears CrossFit and they just immediately assume whatever they assume, then it doesn't open them up to like, hey, there is a gym that has this name in it, but you have hands down the best guy in the world at being strong. And by extension, one would think that he can get other people strong. And if you look at competitions that your teams have been, you're like, yeah, no, he's pretty successful at that. But someone would just say, oh, I don't train CrossFit. I don't want to go at a CrossFit gym. I don't train Kung Fu. I don't want to go that. And I think, again, that can be limiting. I think the hard part is it requires some discernment, and that requires effort. And people don't care much for that either.
Oof. Yeah. Well, I've said often, if there were a better methodology out there, then we would be at that gym. Like, I'm not necessarily beholden to CrossFit.
Sure.
Even though I've been following some version of it for 16 years now.
Yeah.
And
clearly it's not working.
Terrible.
Yeah. I mean, don't.
Yeah.
Just throw that shit right away.
Garbage. Absolute garbage.
I mean.
No, I continue to get better in areas that I focus on. And that, again, something you can extrapolate and take to other parts of your life. CrossFit is designed to create well-rounded human beings in the fitness atmosphere. And you can take that mentality and again, take it elsewhere and go learn new skills and treat life like your athletic development, where it comes in waves, comes in cycles. Sometimes you're hyper focused on one thing. Sometimes you're in sort of I hate using the word maintenance phase, but
sure.
but sort of, yeah. Life has seasons, and I mean, we're in this beautiful barn right now, and this is a season that I haven't experienced in probably a decade.
Yeah, not in Arizona, you don't. Yeah, I think that physical expression is such a good model, and it's kind of where when we have this the body mind spirit trifecta or whatever, this working idea that we've founded this on, that's kind of where we start. That becomes the foundation where it starts in the body, I think, because that's just what's most accessible to everyone, right? And so if we actually talk about fitness and working out quite a bit with Savage Gentlemen. People may wonder, what does that have to do with being a savage or a gentleman? And I think that it has a lot. Personally, I mean, it's hard to be a non-physical savage.
I think it's paramount.
I don't think you could accomplish it, right? They just don't work together. And so when you build that foundation, and personally, I think it generally starts with savage, and then we refine it to gentleman. You can do that in the other direction, and there are plenty of people that are far too gentlemen that need to hone in on their savage. So again, we put the gentleman part down, and we really dial in on the savage, and then the guys
Like down the road.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, no. We start them with the savage.
Okay.
And then what happens for the guys that are too savage, we don't necessarily just put them right into the gentleman. We also have to like clean up their savage, because their mind, you have a guy that's like, well, if I'm a man, then I got to go out and I got to be a tough guy, and I got to go and we're drinking beers and we're watching sports, and it's like, I know that's the societal understanding of masculinity is just like man cave-esque little box where you drink beer, you smoke cigars, and you watch football.
Watch other people work hard.
Yeah. And in my mind, you're LARPing masculinity. You're not actually living it. You're vicariously experiencing it and then calling it masculinity. And that's not, I mean, people are like, fuck you, man. The football season's coming
We're not
up.
going to have any listeners by the end of this.
I mean, we'll probably cut our listenership by half. So what's 50% of 3?
Well, you, me, and Sarah will listen.
Yeah, we'll listen. Yeah, we'll enjoy. And this isn't to beat up on anybody's thing. It's just to encourage folks to look beyond to what their own immediate boundaries, right? Again, this idea of building containers, and this is your idea, and there's nothing else. It's like, well, maybe there is something more to my experience on this planet than what I currently have, and a part of the idea of Savage Gentleman is somewhat aspirational to either show you, hey, there's other stuff. Look, we're doing it, or if we can't, highlight someone who is, or just expand that horizon a little bit to just encourage you to start looking. Maybe we don't have the answers, but surely there is more out there than what you're experiencing, and maybe you should go, I don't know, knock on those doors and see what's behind there. And I don't know where I was going with that. Where were we?
That's all right. Well, maybe so we don't lose everybody right away. I will say, I mean, I love sports.
Sure.
I've been an athlete for 26 years now in organized sport, and for a really long time. I mean, at one point I was a part of 4 fantasy leagues.
Nice.
Fantasy football leagues, and at some point though, I became older than the guys I was watching on TV, and I started thinking to myself, like, I don't want to give up the lifestyle that I've worked so hard to create, and so like I will. Again, seasons, right? I put that in my back pocket, and I go do other things, and I can pick right back up anytime I want to, and I can go hang out with my buddies and go watch a football game.
Yep.
In fact, like, later this season, I've got tickets to go see the Cardinals.
Nice.
So like it's just there's so much more to me than that.
Yes.
Right. And
I think it's multifaceted. I think that's where it stops, is people pick their archetype. They pick their thing. I'm this guy. I'm football guy. I'm sports car guy.
CrossFit guy.
I'm CrossFit guy. Yeah. And we don't extend beyond that. And I think that's, And I don't think we're generally penalized for that in this day and age. Whereas, 100 years ago, if you were only one thing, your family wasn't going to survive, right? You needed to be adept at several things. You needed to be able to, hunt for things, grow your own food, fix and build things, these basic survival elements.
Yes, and
Okay.
I think that communities were a lot more close and tight knit then as well. So I think you could specialize in one thing and be the hunter or the builder or the blacksmith, and you could more accurately or adequately rely on those around you to pick up in the places where you're not good. And
Okay.
I actually think that one of the things that I personally struggle with most is this feeling like I have to do everything myself because there's no one else I can rely on to that level of.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
No, I like that idea, and that's what makes it a yes and, where it's like, I think arguably guys had more useful skills across the board. At a certain, we have more knowledge at our fingertips, and now we can Google and YouTube.
And
but I think about my grandpa.
Some people can type 130 words a minute.
Yeah.
98% accuracy. I think that's what Albert said over the weekend.
Okay, that's what he's.
Yeah.
Wow.
And that's wildly impressive to some guy who I still henpeck sometimes.
Sure. And there's a utility in that.
Yeah.
Right. And this is where, I don't want people to think that oh man, Josh only likes dudes that can do this. And it's like, no,
we're looking at yes and.
Yeah. It's like, do your thing, be good at this. And I don't need my accountant to have, a 300-pound plus snatch. That's not, you know what I mean? It's cool that he does, but that's not integral to that. That's not the quality that I'm looking for. What I'm looking for is someone who's willing and able to put in the work to get themselves to a high level. And that I know that, man, when the chips are down, that guy's got my back. And I think for men, it's hard to convey that in a digital realm. And it's hard to convey that in areas that are not physical expressions, right? I saw that you did this amazing spreadsheet, and that's very impressive. But that spreadsheet, if we're in a vicious cockfight, and you got to keep your head on a swivel, that spreadsheet doesn't mean much. And so I'm not sure that I know where you're at in that realm. And so sometimes the physicality, that body component where, we're standing shoulder to shoulder in something, really drives home the point of yes, I can trust this guy. I know he's capable of what he says he's capable of. Because the way you do one thing is generally the way you do all things. And there's a disconnect. I think the body doesn't lie. But we can see some of these other areas where it's man, you can be amazing in something that's very cerebral, but you're utterly useless in everything else. And I think that in modern society can go largely unchecked. And then guys get to the point where they needed that thing that they never developed because they didn't need to. They didn't recognize oh man, I probably should have taken care of my body a little bit more, not to be some, world champion, but just so that this vessel can support the thing that I'm actually really good at, which is the spreadsheets or whatever.
That was exactly where yes and the spreadsheets are incredibly important, but life's not a single spreadsheet, right? It's a combination of hundreds or thousands of them over the course of 20, 30, 40 years. And if you're not taking care of your body, then your ability to continue producing high level spreadsheets diminishes over time. Your ability to pay attention for that duration, I think, diminishes over time. And if you're sick, it's very difficult to continue producing high level work.
Yeah, and I think for men there is this, whether we want to believe it or recognize it or not, there's a something inside us that is telling us, hey, you need to be more of an asset than a liability.
Absolutely.
Right? And I think any man who is struggling with something, it's because they haven't secured that. They're not confident in where they stand in that dichotomy there. And so that unknown creates a lot of tension, a lot of anxiety, and we have guys walking around wondering, like, it's a self-worth issue, right? I don't know my self-worth because I'm not actually sure if and when and how or why I am an asset. And if I'm not an asset, then there's a good chance I might be a liability, and that could become, soul crushing. And any of us has ever felt like we weren't useful, or that we could be more and we're not, has been in that kind of pit of despair. It's not a lot of fun,
no.
Right? And I don't think our society today is very well adept at helping guys find and know when and where they are an asset. And we try to like conform everyone to this box, and everyone's got to be productive, and you've got to do this, and you got to have a 9-to-5 job and this house and this, 401, and you have to, and it's like, man, not everyone is cut out for that, and that's okay. And we don't give people the tools to figure shit out. We just want to like crowbar them into this thing that we call being a man, or being whatever, a good citizen. And I don't know that it's a one size fits all in the reality of it. And I think it doesn't leave room for any outliers. And I would argue that as individual as people are, in some capacity, we're all outliers. In one way area or another, you have outliers.
I encourage people always to find something to go all in on. And just take it to the limit of your ability, whatever that limit is. And it doesn't have to be world class. But it's you then understand the intricacies of whatever that subject is. It could be weightlifting. It could be fighting. It could be accounting.
Yeah.
It could be, literally anything. But until you've taken the time to become a specialist in something, I don't think you have a reasonable appreciation for what other people who are specialists have gone through, and had to learn to navigate. And I also think that, we talked a little bit about this offline too, that the best things in life sort of exist along the extremes. Either, and I think it was in the context again of fitness, like most of these dumb conversations are.
But, to the hammer, every problem's a nail.
Hey,
Hammer CrossFit, TM.
Will make you stronger than your strongest excuse.
I love that line,
yeah.
Man. I mean, that is like, say that again a little bit slower so people can hear
it. We will make you stronger than your strongest excuse. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of weight behind that. And I know that, probably the first 20 minutes of this are like, it sounds really elitist or really condescending, really like.
If you're still listening,
yeah. It's
we had to thin the herd, man. We had to get rid of the riffraff in the first 20 minutes.
There you go.
But more elitist bullshit.
Yeah. Sorry, guys.
Real assholes.
But I'm speaking to myself.
Oh, 100%.
And I don't think, and man, I want to be careful, because even this conversation can sound, I hate when people talk in the past tense about struggles, because I fucking struggle all the time to maintain the level of conviction that I have.
That's a really good segue, I think, your particular struggle, because you were telling me something earlier from this that occurred during the event, and I guess this would be a good time to introduce a little bit of context.
Sure.
I was just going to throw out to you, like, James, why are you here? And
then, or is that?
I just wanted to see where you went, like how you took that, and then
well, man, I'm here for a lot of reasons. I'm here to hang out with my buddy Josh.
Okay.
I was here to see what the Legion was all about, because I'm basically an outsider.
Yep.
I don't often join things.
Yeah.
And I kind of came into this as, well, like, sure, I'll come and help out, but I'm gonna I'm gonna bring my camping gear, and you gave me the out to sleep in my hammock
Sure.
and to be off site and to do whatever I needed to do, and that was what I intended from the beginning. And then I got here, and I met the other guys, and I mean the very first thing we did was paddle through. Can you even call that a river? It was a swamp.
Oh, swamp, creek,
Yeah.
river adjacent.
I mean,
Asterisks.
took us
somewhere.
over 3 hours to get less than 3 miles.
Yeah, it was a slog.
Yeah.
It was a little adventure. And for just a taste of context for those of you that may not follow every single thing that we do on social media or on our email list, which shame on you. Why wouldn't you be? But we did just wrap up our second Legion event. This is a live in-person event where we have guys come out and we do cool shit. And so James was kind enough to come and join us and lend us his expertise and experience, and it was really good for us.
All right, I guess I'll that's a good segue, Josh.
You fuck.
Yeah. Because a similar question was asked to me around the campfire of why I was here. And I said exactly that. I was like, well, I thought that me coming and you guys doing this, it would be really good for you guys. And, then 18 hours after like meeting all these strangers, I'm like crying around a campfire. And not to like turn anybody off to that idea either, but it's there aren't many opportunities where men get to spend that kind of quality time together. We're often just looked at as the provider, the guy who needs to go establish resources and like, hey, go figure it out. And oftentimes we go it alone. Yeah. And I've been that person for a really long time, and it's landed me a decent amount of success, but also it's exhausting. It's lonely. It's very frustrating, and it's not a good way to live a life, I don't think.
It's certainly not the way we were intended. I mean, this idea, this alpha sigma male mentality where guys, beat their chest about going it alone and I don't need anybody and I'm this outsider kind of thing, being a source of pride it's not as romantic as John Wick would have you believe. I mean, and I think people have a hard time separating reality from fantasy, and you can assign yourself whatever Greek letter you want to.
Omicron.
Sure, why not?
I don't know.
I'm a pi male.
All right.
Sure.
3.14 and 1.9.
Just go on to infinity, bro.
Okay.
Boom.
Where the hell do we go from there?
No, nowhere. I'm done. Fucking everyone be a pi male. And you don't we don't seem to understand that within the context of our evolutionary pattern, if we're using wolves as the analogy, or alpha male like as an alpha of the pack, like the lone wolf dies hands down every time. That motherfucker is not surviving for very long. And so trying to put that on a pedestal and then pretend that is what we should all be striving to do. And not to say that, again, sometimes you have to do what you have to do to survive. And we are nothing if not resourceful. But imagine were you to just stop, get to that point, hey, I'm by myself, I'm making it, and I have, that's good enough. Good is good enough. And, now you wear this badge of honor and you make this identity being a lone wolf. How much of your life would you have missed out on? I mean, certainly, for whatever it's worth, you probably wouldn't have indulged in this experience.
Absolutely not.
Right?
It was brought to my attention on more than one occasion that I was the only man of the 9 of us without a wife and children. And which was interesting because I've never really looked at it as, I mean, it's not a negative thing. And it's not something that I don't want.
Sure.
It's just something that hasn't necessarily been in the cards for me yet. And it was really interesting to learn, or to be able to almost like look up to people who are there already. Because many of them aren't. I mean, I was maybe the youngest person there, but only by a couple of years. Yeah. And I think that it's good for me to see how much more of my life like I have to look forward to. because it's difficult to take it back to what we were just talking about. I've been an athlete that's been my identity,
Yeah.
Or a large part of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been a gym owner for 6 years now, and a multi-gym owner for 3 or 4 or something.
Mm-hmm.
And it's taken up almost all of my resources, and I haven't gone on vacation in 6 years. Right. And so why am I here? Part of this was like, I turned 37 this year, actually in maybe 2 weeks or something. I don't know what today is.
Happy birthday when this comes out.
Hey, thanks.
Probably be.
Yeah. And I'm trying to learn to take some time for myself and do a little bit of self-care,
Sure.
like legitimate self-care. And
Which to most men sounds like a bunch of rubbish.
Yeah, right.
Especially when you try to cram that into the hustle culture. You got to grind, right? And where's your axe? Real quick. We're going to use a prop here. So imagine, if you will, I mean, this thing is relatively sharp, and I'm holding an axe that I have here that I've finished the handle on. It looks pretty nice, I think, if I do say so myself. This axe actually belonged to my grandfather, who passed away, and so I got that from him. And it was pretty dull, it was pretty rusty. So what did I do? I ground the edge down, and I honed it. And we talked about this around the campsite with the stone. It's like, there's nothing wrong with that. To sharpen the edge is important to make a useful tool. But if all I did was grind on this, at a certain point, I don't know how long it would take. If I'm grinding it every day, 1 year, 2 year, 10 years from now, I'm going to be left with nothing but this wooden handle. And so yeah, no, we need to teach people to work hard. You can't just sit around and do nothing and expect things, to go your way. But you can't exclusively grind. You have to take that time to, you brought up a something that I really love. This almost mantra of pursuing something, but never at the expense of the vessel, right? It's like, man, I'm going to add to this as much as I can. I'm going to, and continue to try and improve in as many ways as I possibly can. But if I do it to the point where it is, causing irreparable damage to the vessel, to my body, to this thing that contains my essence, I'm not actually getting ahead. And I think people miss that mark when it's something that's generally less physical, like a job, right? You have a job, you're sitting in the office, there's like, I'm not doing anything that hard. But aren't you? The amount of stress that guys have, and they have no ability to release it because they feel like they can't have self-care. They can't take that vacation. # no days off, bro. And anyone who has lived in the physical fitness world and has achieved anything worth achieving, because there's people who don't take days off in the fitness world, and they will wear that as a badge of honor, but I have yet to see a single one of them ever be a world champion at anything. You had days where you rested,
right? Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, and I think especially when you're working that hard, you need to rest equally hard. Again, It's living life on the extremes, right? I love living on the extremes.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
And so when I rest hard.
Yeah.
When I go on vacation, for 3 weeks. Which, that's what this is.
Yeah.
And so this happened to perfectly, I don't know if I would say perfectly fit in, but I made it work.
Yeah.
And I've enjoyed every minute. And I don't want to leave now. So
you don't have to.
Yeah.
You can cancel that plane ticket, man.
There you go.
And there was something that was said that I wanted to finally circle back to. It was a long way to the well, and we might have lost all the water, but that's okay. The perception of who and what you are. You were saying that you're like, man, I have my own struggles that people don't often recognize. People just make assumptions. They see you in this dapper vest. They're like, well, this guy's got his life together. Oh, you're a world champion weightlifter. Oh, you're a CrossFit gym owner. This guy's super squared away. And, in talking with Albert, one of the guys who came out to the event, right, he was very surprised to hear that, like, wait a minute, you don't just live perfectly every single day. I think it was very eye-opening, and we don't ever see that from people who achieve great things. They're no offense, but they're kind of just as fucked up as the rest of us.
I don't. Yeah, so maybe I wear that like a badge of honor.
Maybe. No, I don't.
No, I'm joking. But honestly, like, I've been very, very lucky to have so many people in my life who have done things at an exceedingly high level. And because they're close to me, I've also seen all of their struggles. Yeah. Or not all of them, but some. I've been able to peek behind the curtain a little bit, and see into them. And it's interesting. I mean, that does seem to be a common. It's like a human universal. It's like, it sounds trite to say, everybody's battling something you know nothing about or whatever. But man, is that true? Oh, yeah. And with the people who come into the gym, and I never want to call them average or general population, because I think just that simply the fact that they're deciding to walk into a CrossFit gym separates them. Yeah, absolutely. But they come with common struggles, and they're I deprioritized myself and my fitness and my health for this job, for this family, for this for something, and now they're either by want or need having to take care of that vessel, and because it's getting sacrificed and it's getting whittled down, and it's getting to the point where the damage can quickly become irreparable.
Yeah, and how many people? I mean, we look at the state of our society. You look at the metrics and the numbers of the health metrics, or rather the lack thereof, and it's like a lot of people have fallen into that, and they don't recognize it until it's arguably too late or so far out of reach that the prospect of getting it back is inconceivable. And I think that's tragic, and I think that we don't offer enough introspective opportunities. And I think this comes from what you touched on earlier, this idea of community, where we're seeing where other people are going and how they got there. We used to exist in a tribe type setting where it's like you saw that path of that elder, from the time you were this big to the time they finally expired. You got to see very intimately. I think you sent me a quote that part of the problem, I think it was younger, that part of the issue that we have is we have this facade where we don't get to see, and we're not as in close proximity to other humans' experience. And so we build this false narrative of who and what they are. I never thought a CrossFit, guy, a guy who's as fit as you, who's as capable as you, would struggle with any of these things, was the conversation that you had. And I think technology, and specifically social media, only exacerbates that even further. And so this is where a real world, real life community is so important, where we have guys that can, and we allow them to peer inside our life. Like you got a firsthand view of what I've going on, for better or for worse. You got the raw, uncut version of Josh Tyler. Yep. And, I think it's hard for us to expose ourselves in that way and to be that open. And people sometimes will mistakenly, I think, use this as vulnerability. You're like, man, guys, we just got to be a lot more vulnerable to each other. And I don't think that that's wise. I hate the idea of vulnerability. There's no positive connotation to vulnerability, in my personal opinion. This may be semantics.
It sounds to me like exposing your belly.
Yeah.
And then I don't like that idea.
No. But I think being open is necessary, but I can only do that when there's trust. Yeah. I've worked out with you. I mean, taking everything, what I knew about you. I mean, I knew enough about you that you were good at weightlifting. I didn't realize how current. I thought that was, I just found out yesterday that you are the current world champion, not like, and I was like, fuck, I'm a shitty friend. But that really didn't matter that much to me. I just found out the weights that you lifted to earn that. Mm-hmm. All I know is that James is strong as fuck. Cool. But what really sold it to me was when we met each other however long ago at Nonprofit, and that heinous workout that we did together.
Oh,
That
God.
remember that one?
That burpee chip over.
Oh, yeah.
Whatever.
Dude, it was gnarly.
Yeah.
And I watched you do that, and you had no reason to suffer as hard as you did, and yet you did anyway, for the benefit of the group, essentially. It wasn't for your own gain. It was just like, hey, for the collective, I'm gonna raise the vibration, and I'm gonna fucking send it. And I was like, yes, that's my dude right there. That's the kind of people that I want and need. And so now that I've seen that I can stand shoulder to shoulder with you, I can expose my belly. Mm-hmm. You can tickle it, and that's fine. Whatever, it's cool. That too much?
I was gonna try to go further, and I just
decided not to.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine too. But we don't often have the mechanism to create that. You know, you and I think, are very fortunate in the circles that we travel in that we get that opportunity. But now imagine, if you will, you know, most of the guys who were not former professional athletes, who are doing whatever it is they're doing, where do they get to find that level of camaraderie to build the trust that is necessary, to have the openness that is necessary to create the mirror that reflects their true self back? Where we've been beating each other, not beating each other. I don't think it's bad, but I mean, it's like, man, I've been tossing stuff at you, and you're just like, oh, fuck. Yeah, you're right. And then same thing, you'll give me a nugget of realization, and I'm like, damn it. Okay. But that's only because I can let you in.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it's because I think we both trust each other to have each other's best interest in mind. Mm-hmm. Like, I only want to see you succeed.
Yes.
Right. And if I can help along the way, I would gladly.
Yep.
And I think the same goes in reverse.
Mm-hmm.
Where to go from there?
Well, the question is, where do we create that? Where do we create the container, the opportunity for guys who otherwise do not have that?
I'm going to take the long way around.
Okay.
And let you maybe serve up the final blow. But I mean, a little bit more about my story. I think I mentioned this over the weekend. My earliest memories are of me living with my mom in a 1-bedroom apartment, where I slept on the couch. Mm-hmm. And then my mom had I don't know the order of which has happened, but she got remarried. She had a daughter, my half sister, and then we moved into a 2-bedroom apartment where she and I had a room, and so I shared it with her forever. And in that environment, I knew all of my neighbors, and we looked after each other. I was call it a latchkey kid, mm-hmm. whatever. I learned to be very, very self-sufficient at a young age. And, you know, there was like Auntie Deborah across the hall, and
yep.
and people took care of each other. And it was my whole life, I had this feeling of like, I just can't wait. Like, the single family home was something that just felt completely out of reach to me. It felt like that was something for rich people. Mm-hmm. And like, oh man, if I could only, if just that, and I worked, and I made friends with schoolmates and whatever, and eventually I played soccer. Soccer was the first sport that I got into, then wrestling, mm-hmm. and then I got into high school and just continued to branch out, and I became friends with those people, and like they kind of took me in, and then I graduated high school. I was the first person in my family to graduate high school. I went to college because that's what my friends were doing, and I was like, okay, cool, I want to go to college. I knew nothing about it, and I made it through. I had some fun stories to, mm-hmm. to you know, and life had a very, very clear upward trajectory until I was out of college and on my own for real, and had absolutely no idea really how to be an adult. And I kind of reverted back to what I knew. I still worked really hard, and I luckily I found a purpose early, because I think that's the thing that kept me from going completely off the rails. Mm-hmm. But I mean, I struggled with alcohol for 17 years, yeah. and I quit drinking at 30. So like, you can do the math.
Yep.
Oof. Yeah.
Oof.
Yeah. And so and that just proceeded to get worse through most of my 20s. But at 28 I bought a house.
You did it.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
It was and
Mission accomplished.
I thought,
now
yeah.
all your problems are solved, right?
And then I immediately had this like overwhelming urge to get the fuck out. I can't, like, this is scary. I don't know. It still didn't feel right. And so I bought a Volkswagen bus, and then eventually a full-size bus that I moved into, because it was mobile and had wheels. And
living in a van down by the river.
absolutely, if I want to, or a Walmart parking lot, or at one point next to my own house.
Sure.
I was renting my house out in order to pay bills, and I was living in a bus next to my home, and I guess I'll jump all over the place a little bit, but I also mentioned earlier that I've been doing CrossFit for 16 years, so that started in 2007, and that's a whole other story that somehow makes its way back to Mark Twight and nonprofit, which
They always do.
right? Everything's just kind of full circle. But my point is, I found the CrossFit community when it was in its infancy, and it allowed me to be a part of something, a group of people who seemed to enjoy the experience of hard work. Yeah. And people who understood the correlation between effort and outcome, and really used the word community, like, and not loosely, but like for real. And everyone was willing to make small sacrifices for the greater good. And again, we talk about, like, I am so lucky. Like, I don't often talk about all of these things in, like, I feel like I have a lot more lately because they seem relevant, because they seem like it can help a lot of people. Yeah. As fucking hokey as that sounds.
No, it really isn't. And this is the part that I think, this is the element that's missing, is that willingness to share. And if we can't find a place to tell our stories and get them and have other people who need them to hear them, no one is ever going to, everything that you've done is kind of pointless. If no one gets to share that experience, right? If you learn to become a world champion at something, and then in no way do you share that process with another human to learn something from, man, what a selfish fucking prick. You know what I mean? Like, that is the most, like, that is the definition of narcissism to me. You know, of just like, I don't care enough about anyone else to help anybody. And I think sometimes we feel diminished. You know, whatever we did isn't good enough. That who really cares? I'm just it was a master's world, wasn't the Olympics. Okay. Yeah. Cool. How many humans on the planet do you know that can snatch, 310 or can clean and jerk 385 or whatever it was? I was going to say 380.
380.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, 380.
All right. I was going to say I'm at 380, but then if the
my
5,
best,
I didn't want
my
to
best jerk was 385, but it was off blocks.
That's gross. That's so stupid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was off blocks.
Only. Yeah. And so, we downplay our own experience because it is our experience, and that normalizes it. We have a normalcy bias to the things that we do, not realizing, like, I'm sorry, how much? A lot of people would struggle to deadlift 385, let alone get it over their freaking head. Just getting that off the floor is a big achievement for a lot of folks. And so if we're doing a disservice to, I think, whatever we were given, whatever innate ability was bestowed upon us to get to that point, if we don't find some way to express that and share it, and I think so many of us are afraid of rejection and afraid of that openness that we don't, right? And so I think that is part of the problem. We don't have the village elders that are teaching, that are showing the way, and we're all left to just figure it out as best as we can, and just like, I'll just fucking Google that.
Or ChatGPT.
Or I'll ChatGPT, tell me how to be a man.
I wonder what that would say.
That's a good question. I thought about it.
I'm 1,000% going to do that after.
For sure, definitely do.
That's
And
interesting.
And then,
But it's that, okay, so there are so many things I want to say right now.
do it all at the same time.
First of all, it's that curiosity, I think, that it is the real value of these kinds of conversations, right? And this is a silly example of it, but curiosity, I think, is like it's the cure for boredom. First of all, so everyone talks about how fucking bored they are all the time, and that's what the doom scrolling and what the traps that most of us fall into is we stop being curious about our ability, about what else is out there that I don't know. And so like I'm genuinely curious to see what the robot tells me how to be a man. And you know what? Maybe it's good information.
I would be surprised. I would not be surprised if it didn't have some really good nuggets in there. That being said, without having a living, breathing, face-to-face example to see and emulate, you can write it down, write the instructions. Just because I read the manual doesn't mean I can do the thing. I said this on someone else's podcast. It's like, man, you can study up to be the best mechanic on the planet, right? You can know how to tear down an engine, how to do anything you could want to learn, right? You could have it in between your ears. If you have never in your life tried to put a bolt on, you have no sensitivity to what cross-threaded feels like.
Or try to remove a rusty one.
Sure. Or
the level of effort that it's involved, or how long that 8-minute task could take when you can't unthread that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, and so I mean, imagine if you will, you're like, okay, you've got the guide, you've got the knowledge. It says, okay, this particular bolt, and this nut that goes on it, I've got to torque it down to this, specific number, and I cross-thread it, not knowing that it's cross-threaded, and I yard that bitch down to whatever that spec is. Guess what? You got yourself some problems there.
Yeah.
Or at least future you does.
Or the second owner. Who
and so would we say that guy is a proficient mechanic? No, because he doesn't have the real world experience to develop the sensitivity. And so that's where the interface has to be a part of it. And I think we have removed that. It's we have to have that analog component to really learn, to really become proficient in anything. And I think we're seem to be trending further and further away from that. And what I'm trying to do is maybe nudge people a little bit back in the other direction, and we take them out in the woods and fucking
keep going,
do things.
Yeah. I think we're also trending toward more and more isolation.
Yes.
And like two silly movies that come to mind to me right now are The Matrix and WALL-E.
Okay.
Both examples of human beings that are not living like human beings.
Yeah.
And I think that's just that does seem to be like what it's never been easier to be average. It's never been easier to live a life where you're like you live unlike any human has ever lived in history. I mean, we think of our modern time. I mean, even since the advent of let's just say electricity. Let's make that the catalyst if we want to. Sure.
Right. That was a long time ago. We have been living in this truly modern world where you can. Well,
I'm not sure what scale you're using, but like I don't look at that as a long time at all.
No, it isn't. But I mean, but when most people think about 17 and 1800s, that's a horse and buggy kind of stuff. Like that's inconceivable. I mean, think about kids today in a rotary phone. That's ancient technology.
Yeah,
it's not long, but the scale is exponential.
The lens through which we look at time now, I think, is just changing exponentially.
It's skewing, and again, I think it's because as you approach the event horizon, or as you approach the center of the black hole, it stretches and distorts time.
Oof.
You know what I mean? And
is there no way out?
No, you have to go through it.
There you go.
We've got to. I mean, it's unfortunate.
It's a
I don't
wormhole.
know what's on the. Yeah, we got a wormhole.
Yeah.
I don't know what's on the other side of a black hole, but it's certainly not nothing. Because it can't be nothing. Because matter can neither be created nor destroyed, right?
I love that.
So I think.
But you can change. It can change state.
For sure.
Yeah.
And what's amazing about the human species is we can actively change our state beyond what most other life on this planet can do. And even to some extent, I don't think that is actually exclusive to humans. I mean, trees will change their state. Watch a horse. You're familiar with horse behavior? Little. You can see a dog. We'll use dogs. You ever watch a dog just like shake it off?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
State change.
Yeah.
It was tense. It needed to decompress, and it did that. How many of us as humans have a mechanism or have built in a pattern to understand, like, man, my state is messed up because of this external environment?
Well, that's the sensitivity that you were referring to earlier. Is I think a lot of us, we lose the sensitivity when we become less human.
Yes.
And that's I think at the core of things, that's what we're really trying to get everyone back to.
Yeah.
Either for me through movement or you through
whatever the fuck it is I do.
Well, as I say, these events that we're putting back
Sure.
together, and which included some movement in there too, but more.
And I like that you said we. Why would you do that?
Oh man.
Ah.
But not just the body, but then also elevating into, like you said, the mind, the spirit, and maybe above. I don't know.
Well, and then I think it repeats, and then once we connect, and I made that fancy little chart because I don't know reasons, because I wanted to visualize, and at least for the people,
because we're dudes and we like to compartmentalize. And
and I get nerdy and geeky, and
daddies.
It's like we're daddies.
Sorry,
Yes.
I'm sorry.
I was waiting for that to surface.
Well, that was the earlier.
I knew you were going. I was waiting.
Yeah,
I was waiing.
Oh man,
I knew it was coming.
For those of you who don't know, you just can't understand.
You can't understand.
Hey, I'm gonna wrap up a thought from earlier.
Yeah,
when I was
please.
talking about community and specifically the CrossFit community and me living in a bus.
Yes.
And I guess maybe a little bit more about that journey. I never had any intentions to be a business owner.
Okay.
I actually had a really, really comfortable job where for 7 years I taught exercise science online, virtually.
Nice.
Where I had, that was the Volkswagen bus.
Okay.
Was the ability for me
studio.
to travel.
Okay.
And not be beholden to a single location. And so the evolution of that was I bought a house in 2014. I immediately bought a gooseneck trailer to build a mobile house on, and then stripped it down, got it all ready, and went, oh shit, I don't know how to build a house. And so I sold that and used that money to buy the Volkswagen bus that I built up a little bit, but it never really came to fruition. High-speed internet wasn't as good as it is now then, and so there were some more restrictions around what I was allowed to do than, I pushed the boundaries constantly.
Yeah.
And if anyone from that world is listening to this, like, first of all, thank you. But like, what I didn't realize at the time that I was like on the forefront of this idea.
This online training, just
and
phenomenon.
It's just insane now. But I you can only do so much through a screen.
Yeah.
Although you can do so much more than I imagined.
Sure.
So, that was the question that was asked often was, and I'll eventually get back to the original point. Well, how do you teach exercise online or like through a computer? And I mean, really, what we're teaching is philosophy, and understanding, and you're learning biomechanics, and you're learning physiology, and you're learning about nutrition and like exercise psychology, and just human behavior, and you're getting the opportunity to interact with people from all around the world, people that you wouldn't otherwise ever meet.
You're not limited by the geographic location, which has been pretty much the limiting factor of human. Advancement. It's like, well, you got what you got.
God bless electricity.
For sure.
Yeah. And I've met more than a handful of students in real life over the years, either them coming to Phoenix or like I've traveled to go meet some of these people, and we've developed real relationships because of it. I've been to students' weddings, and like, I mean, it's amazing.
Yeah.
And there's the human element, the community element has been so important to me that in 2017, the CrossFit gym that I was a part of, when the owners decided that they were going to move on and they were considering closing down the space, I guess I got to use a different word. Sorry, Michael. Sorry, Mark.
The space TM.
Yeah. When they were considering closing down the facility, I just was like, hey, I think I can do this. And I mean, they raked me over the coals, and I vastly overpaid for a business that I knew absolutely nothing about. But I had conviction.
Yeah.
Right. I had a I don't know what the word is now. I had a responsibility to the people who I said, like, I'm doing this for. And it was scary to be going from something that was like working its way towards becoming completely remote, and actually is now. I still have friends that are in that world, to something that is brick and mortar, and you are tied to this city that you didn't grow up in, that you don't know a ton of people in.
Yeah.
And I just went all in. And I mean, we struggled hard. My whole first year, I maintained that full-time teaching job on top of learning how to run the business, on top of trying to like be a coach. And then like I was now elevated above my peers because they were all just friends of mine who I coached with, that I now had to try and I was a shitty boss, a really shitty boss. And they're not listening to this, but I'm sorry, guys. I didn't know any better.
Sure.
And I didn't actually at the time then have the skills necessary, the interpersonal skills, to really deal with my own problems, much less anybody else's. Right. And 9 months into that evolution, whatever, is when I finally got sober. After an event that we had at the gym, and I drove myself home and just recognized at that point that like this is no longer serving me. And it was, man, it's one of the first things I ever quit in my whole life.
You're not a quitter.
Never.
James Ellis is not a quitter.
Fuck no. To my detriment.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
And as a young James Ellis, to the great expense of the vessel.
Yeah. Well, I mean, again, I said this, and it may come across as harsh. It's like winners never quit and quitters never win. But if you never win and you never quit, maybe you're doing the wrong fucking thing.
You got to reevaluate.
You got to take a second and just look at it.
And so, like, I learned how to navigate that space, and things got better. And 2017 was better than 16, and 18 was better than 17, and we were like, again, consistent trajectory upwards. There's a lot of ebbs and flows, but it was overall net benefit, net positive, and we hit our best month ever, February of 2020.
Wow.
Yeah. And I went on a ski trip. So that was, oh shit, okay. I guess I lied when I said I haven't been on vacation in 6 years. I've been on one vacation in 6 years.
Ski trip?
Yeah.
Cool.
With a bunch of my buddies from college, and we went to Banff, and it was incredible. And while I was at the airport on my way back home, that was the first I learned about COVID. And oh yeah.
Wah wah. Really takes the fun out of takes the wind out of your sails there.
I think 3 weeks later, our governor told us that we had to shut down.
Yeah.
And that was a Thursday. I remember it very clearly. And that same day, I gathered the staff, and we tried to devise a plan, and I wrote a message to the membership, and I said, it is our responsibility to provide a service. And if we cannot provide that service in the way that we're accustomed to, then we will find a way. And by Monday morning, 5:30 a.m., we were teaching classes online.
No shit.
Yeah.
Nice. Because you already had the model.
Exactly. Yeah. And so we gave our equipment out to members and we said, hey, as long as you continue to support us, we're going to continue to serve you.
Yeah.
And this is not useful to us right now
Sure.
anyway. And so please take it.
Mm-hmm.
And for the diehards and the young kids and the hardcore athletes, we built a gym outside because luckily I live in.
It's in
Arizona. It was March in Arizona, April in Arizona. It was gorgeous. And so we rode it out for 3 months or so. And by, I know Murph, I think, was the first workout that we had done. So Memorial Day weekend, we were able to come back in and we were so happy. And we'd figured out this problem, right? And then I think 3 to 4 weeks later, there was a second round of shutdowns in Arizona. And we were told once again, cut it out. You guys got to close. And that second wave is really, I think, what devastated the fitness industry.
Yeah.
And I was confident though. I'm like, okay, we just did this. We lost maybe 30% of our revenue, but also the expenses went way down too.
Yeah.
Because so we just sort of we figured it out.
Yep.
We rode the wave a little bit and then rode the low tide. Yeah. And that second wave is when 2 other communities that I was close with, actually a gym that I had helped start in 2014, and then a gym that I had dated their head coach for a while and been to a bunch of their community events, and very, very tight-knit group, actually the original Hammer CrossFit, and good friends of mine who owned it. And I reached out to them and I was like, hey guys, is there anything I can do to help? I mean, we're surviving pretty well. And, they had basically said they both worked full-time jobs. And so it was sort of a passion project to begin with. And then when the passion project goes from neutral to in the red, you have to start, and also both with families, both with children. Yeah. And they're like, we're out. We're just hoping we're hoping that this doesn't hurt us too bad, right? So I was like, well, I'll step in, sure. Naively optimistic.
Yeah.
You'll see that's a trait that I guess I have. I think to some people, if you've met me at different parts of my life, you would never, ever, ever call me optimistic. But when it actually comes to humanity, I hold a very high standard of what I think is possible. Yeah. And again,
sometimes to your great frustration,
and sometimes in the past and probably in the future to the detriment or the expense of the vessel. But generally, now I think I'm more sensitive, and I'm able to see when this is no longer serving me and when I need to let go of it. Yeah. Maybe that's what the 17-year struggle with alcohol
took you to get to.
Yeah. And so that happened, and then literally, short timeline. This is 2020, June 16th. I found out that Hammer CrossFit was closing. June 29th, I signed the paperwork to own it, or to purchase it.
Yep.
I totaled a vehicle that day, but that's a whole other story. I took over operations July 1st. We got, so hold on a second. It doesn't matter. I took over operations July 1st when we were told again that we had to shut down. Yeah. And then July 4th, Spark CrossFit, which is the gym that I helped start before the one that I eventually came to own, announced that they were closing. And by July 9th, I had 3 gyms.
3 gyms, yeah.
Yeah. And so I went from 1 to 3 in that span of 9 days.
When it rains, it pours.
Yeah. And there are some other fun stories that correspond with that. Sure. But I had a responsibility to some people.
It occurred to me, and sometimes it just takes, I'm a little slow.
Sure.
So I apologize. I had been, you asked me, what were we going to talk about on this thing? Fuck, I don't know. And then I actually got me to thinking, I was like, we can talk about anything. We've been talking all weekend, non-fucking stop. I mean, it's been some really deep conversations, and you shared a wealth of insight that I found incredibly useful, not just in a personal capacity, but as a professional with the business and Savage Gentleman. And I was like, man, I don't know. I like to come up with like catchy titles for this and just encapsulate it. And a lot of times it'll start on the front end, and other times it won't be until after. It won't be until I go through and edit and listen to it that I figure out, oh, okay, this is the crux of it. But listening to that, I realized, man, this guy is, among other things, an expert at building a community. And if not expert, you're pretty fucking good. I mean, you rallied all of these, you took a terrible bad situation and found a way to sustain and maintain communities, and joking with the guys, at the thing, it's like, man, if you walked away from this, you've just written a death sentence to all of these people because they have no outlet anymore, not to put any more weight on your shoulders. But I think it just, you say it's not a community. Well, if that's not important and if that's not a community, I don't know what is.
I guess what I'm saying, like, I don't know that I would call myself being an expert at moving a barbell. I know people who are real experts at building communities. So I guess maybe I'm just not really like called.
Yeah, you're not there yet. Yeah, that's okay. But it is something. You just need more reps, and I'm gonna.
That's exactly right.
So here we go.
Okay.
Do you think that there's? How much do you believe in things happening about chance and coincidence?
I think that I believe in preparation more than I like to plan.
Sure.
And I think that the universe, whatever we want to call that, tends to move people in the direction that they need to go. Maybe not always the direction that they want to go.
Quite often a direction that they may be unaware that they are going in.
Yeah,
why?
For sure.
And all that to say, during that, I was like, building a community with James Ellis. And I was like, oh yeah, I could see that being a cool title for a podcast. And then
building a legion.
And then I was like, well, wait a minute. Fuck, that's what I need. That's what we're trying to do here with Savage Gentlemen, is build a community. But
is this a job interview? What is this?
It's just interesting that, how that so closely aligned, and whatever your level of involvement, you have already influenced it, whether you wanted to or not, in the conversations that we've had. And, this idea of, for me on my path is kind of letting things happen because I can't control it. Like, I could have never suspected that, like, hey, you know what? You know who needs to be here at this event is James, because I need him to help lend me his wisdom and insight on building a community so that I can chart a path forward in this area that I don't have a lot of experience in building this community of the Legion, and some would argue, like, man, you've built a pretty good community in the League of Savage Gentlemen. And I would say, yeah, for sure. 23,000 guys is nothing to sneeze at, and it's pretty productive in our closed Facebook group that we have.
Is that 44,000 Instagram followers?
Yeah, we've got some eyeballs, right? But to your point that you mentioned earlier in your online training, it's like, yes, you can do a lot of good in a digital realm, but it's never going to amount to what people can do in person, hence the transition that you made to real world experience, and hence the transition that we have made and are continuing to build. And because right now these events are really small, what I mean? We've got a handful of guys and maybe a dozen people there total. Right. In max capacity, like, I don't feel like we can adequately serve more than 12 participants, and then whatever the personnel staff it needs to facilitate that. And so this is really, really small. There's not which is okay. And it needs to be, there's an intimacy there that is required. But man, I think as we have identified and as you have seen, it's like, man, communities thrive when they're growing, when they're bustling, when they're healthy,
and when their members are contributing.
Yes.
So we talked earlier about my mission, vision, values.
Yep.
One of the lines in that is community requires contribution, right? And I pour my heart and soul into my communities.
Yeah.
And I think the area that I lack in, and that's why I would not hesitate to call myself an expert, is I have a very difficult time. I mean, you talked earlier about the lone wolf dying.
Yeah.
I feel like that sometimes because I'm not very good at letting people in. And not that I'm not open and honest.
No, but it's a skill.
Sort of thing, but it's more, I am also learning as I go, and I haven't had a lot of people surrounding me who seem to want to grow something bigger.
Yeah.
Who understand that like what we have is already great, but it will never be as good as it can
what
be.
It could be.
Yeah.
This is the paradox that I think we as men experience, is what we talked about at the event. And the whole purpose, my whole agenda was to get guys to understand what you are is great. James Ellis, you're amazing. Who you are is all it needs to be. Yes, and there is also more. And so how do we realize that potential? And whether it's our individual selves, whether it's our family dynamic, whether it's a business, whether it's any endeavor that we have, yes, and holding both of those, like, it's good where it's at. I'm content, but also I know that there's more potential, and I have the curiosity to explore that.
Yeah. You want to fuck around and find out.
I do.
Absolutely.
In the worst way, in the best way.
On the extremes.
On the extremes.
In the best and the worst
all of
way.
the fucking around I can do.
Yeah.
I cut you off. You were going to say something.
Yeah, it's lost.
Okay, that's fine.
Into the ether.
That'll
weird.
happen.
Yeah.
We've spent way too much time together.
Yeah, for sure. Well, maybe I can pick it back up in post. Just kidding.
No, I'm not editing shit.
No, so I said community requires contribution.
Yes. And I think that's the lack.
Yeah. So realm. Where I said that I lack.
Okay.
Where I lack. No, not necessarily. Where I lack is my ability to communicate what's happening in real time and to get everybody else on board with things. I'm a self-starter. I'm good at. I'm a generator. If we want to go that route, right? What I need is some projection. I need someone to amplify the signal, or a team of people to amplify the signal, and to in some ways like develop the curiosity enough to pick my brain to see what I've got going on that I'm trying to figure out right now, and then see how they can be useful. And how we can grow this thing together. I've never wanted it to be about me.
Sure.
But man, I know I have the tools, and I've said to some other friends of mine, like, I would make somebody else a hell of a lot of money. But really, what that, like, I have a strange relationship. I've had a strange relationship with money in the past, where like, you look at like it's kind of a gross thing. But then also, like, that is a direct correlation of the number of people that I'm able to help, right? Like so the more money I have, the more the more people I'm able to influence,
right?
And by purposefully keeping myself small, I'm doing everyone a disservice.
Yeah,
absolutely. I going all the way back to I worked for Lifetime Fitness for 5 years. And during that time, I wore all kinds of hats, lots of different Jameses. But my primary role is kind of a sales role.
Okay.
In the personal training world. So I maintained about 20 to 25 clients hours a week, and then all the other time was spent meeting brand new people and introducing them to fitness and saying like, "Hey, do you want to continue this party?" And I sold $10,000 to $15,000 a month of personal training for a couple of years.
Yeah, for a very large corporation.
Yeah, for $1 billion company. Yeah, and like our staff did between $3 and $4 million of personal training a year. And I was 23 to 28. Like I was a fucking train wreck.
Yeah.
I was living out of my Dodge Caliber, behind the lifetime, showering at 4 a.m.
Yep.
and then sweet talking the girls in the cafe to give me apples and peanut butter and chicken breasts for like $2. And then and training clients all in the morning, and then working out in the middle of the day, and then training clients all evening, and
Making
then
someone
drinking
else $15,000 a
yeah,
month.
and then drinking at night and sleeping in my car, and
Yeah,
and no one was the wiser,
right.
right? That's unsustainable. I don't know if like, yeah. If you were curious,
No,
it's not the
yeah,
best way to go
surprise.
through life. Yeah.
Well, and you can, and you probably did trick yourself for a long time into saying this is okay, this is fine.
Sure.
Right? Because you have this one metric that was successful. Right? You had poor incentives
Sure.
to continue these bad habits.
Sorry, Mark.
This is a ripoff.
I know.
We're just copying these guys. What
Hey,
bastards?
I'll come back to that.
Yeah. And so how often do we look at the boxes that are checked? We fixate on the ones that are checked or that we like or that the world gives us the cookie for, and then we dismiss everything else that is a complete train wreck in our lives. Well, it's okay because I still got my job. I'm successful here. But it's only a matter of time for these issues, whatever the underlying foundation that is causing all these problems, runs uphill or downhill or however you want to build that analogy. But it's going to bleed in, and I'm sure over time it probably did until you had to make a very drastic change. And I think often we can't project far enough in the future because we don't have that value sheet to adhere to. I have one definition of success. As long as I get there, that's all that matters. By any means necessary. And it's a very limited way. And I think guys fall into that. And then all of a sudden, everything comes crashing down. They had the wife, the kid, the cars, the job, but they didn't have the underlying foundation of knowing and loving who they were or who they are. And then everything implodes.
Yeah, things got worse for me before they got better.
Sure. And I think sometimes we have to go through that. But I don't sometimes we have to, but I don't think we always have to. I think that, we have this concept of life where we have to get punished, and we have to suffer.
And so if nobody else is doing it to you, then you'll do it to yourself.
And you'll do it to yourself. But I don't think that's true at all. I think we could get where we needed to go without suffering if we built doesn't mean it'll be easy. But I don't think we were put on this place for just everything to be awful and you have to go through all this trauma and all these terrible negative things in order to come out on the other side and be super cool. I think under the
Thanks,
right.
Daddy.
You're welcome, Daddy. Gosh. I think in a perfect world, we could, under the right guidance and under the right circumstances, that we could get to a place without having to just accept my life is shit. That's just the way life is. Better deal with it. And how many guys just adopt that mentality and suffer in silence for, I don't know, 17 years?
An indefinite period of time or until they become a statistic?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is where that openness and that community, to kind of bring it back a little bit, is so important because no one was close enough. There wasn't enough intimacy with anyone to see that and be like, whoa, Daddy, that's way too much.
Do you have show notes by chance?
Not typically.
Not officially?
Not officially.
We gotta.
You just want to let some context why we're
go
not
ahead.
being a couple of weirdos. No, it's your baby.
Okay. Well, so, gosh, why does that have to be my baby?
You introduced it. This is your
true.
fault.
Okay, so there's this Instagram page called Game Changers Show, and I actually think it's probably a TV show somewhere.
Yeah, it's just
kind of
improv comedy.
It's like Whose Line Is It Anyway? Like revamped, and there was a skit, an improv skit where they said, two guys hanging out, but replacing the word dude with daddy. And I mean, just
look it up.
the
You won't be
funniest-
disappointed.
yeah, I
It's
mean, we
so
were
absurd.
crying.
It's so absurd.
I sent it to every daddy I know.
Dude, all the daddies love it.
Yeah. It was phenomenal.
Yeah, the best response.
The daddy abides.
Yeah, the daddy
Berkey.
abides. Yeah, so
shout
good.
out.
And speaking of Berkey, you were gonna mention something. I feel like about.
Oh
us
no.
ripping off
When I
our
said
friends.
that's right. Well,
Imitation
Here,
is the
I'm
best
gonna-
form of flattery.
yes. And actually, so what's funny is maybe I'll take this a few ways because you just said that and reminded me of something. I am now in a position where I'm going from learning. Well, it's easy to look at it as I'm going from learning from others to teaching others, right? And we can tie this to a lot of things. Because yesterday, we were talking about the idea of like we are always in this position where simultaneously we are teachers and students. I am, and that kind of brings me back to Ram Dass quote: "Is we're all just walking each other home." Which I love. I love the idea of there is always someone in front of me to learn from, and always someone behind me to teach to.
Yeah.
And that sometimes we're walking different directions, and that it's really it's a dance.
Yeah.
And that I can learn just as much from the person behind me as the person in front of me, and vice versa.
Yep.
And they can learn from each other, and
Yep.
you get it. So maybe it's not a line, maybe it's a web.
It's a polka.
Whatever, it's something.
Yeah.
It's not barbells, so I don't know how to dance it.
Sure.
But I am in a position now where I'm teaching young trainers, new and up and coming trainers,
Yep.
things, and they will copy me, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
And I immediately get frustrated because I'm like, no, I need you to develop your own voice, right? And I love that you're what you're doing.
Yeah.
But I love what you're doing, and I want you to figure it out on your own. Find a way to say this in your own words. However, there's a spot of we've talked about a lot of things that I'm like they're all tying back. There's a
Funny how
Spotify
that works.
interview with an artist named Glenn Hansard, and he's an Irish busker. Just incredibly talented, one of the best voices I've ever heard. And he talks about being a young artist and being like busking on the streets of Ireland, and how he's like, when you're young, you grow up copying others. I think the question that was asked of him was, who do other people associate you with, or who do people think you sound like, or whatever? And he said Van Morrison.
Okay.
Because Van Morrison was someone that he grew up listening to and playing his songs. He actually has an insane version of Astral Weeks that's
cool.
it's so beautiful. But anyway, and he says I think that's how all artists start, is by copying other people, or anyone starts is by copying other people. He said if you put enough effort in and you give enough time and resources to this, he's like, if you're lucky, eventually you get your own voice.
Yeah.
And that's really, I think, where the magic happens. And all of this nonsense that we've kind of came through to get to here is now I'm lending my voice to this podcast, and hopefully one of the 3 people who listen is going to get something out of it.
Man. Yeah, that is the hope. And that model that you just built there is, I think, the model for learning to become a man, in that you can't just materialize it from the ether. It doesn't just happen on its own. You have to emulate. You have to see some other figure, right? Some other man, and emulate that person until you find your own voice.
Yep.
Right?
That's right.
And that voice will change, and that doesn't, I don't think that stops once you turn 18. Say you live in you're fortunate enough to have a dad or a father figure that you can emulate, and then boom, magical number, because apparently at 18 something happens, and now you're a man. Go. No, I think that continues throughout our life, and we will, like you said, student and teacher, we will see men who are older, men who are younger, who are wiser, who are dumber. And we will continue to learn by emulating them in some way, because that is how humans have evolved. We watch and we try to replicate, and then we refine it.
See one, do one, teach one.
Yeah. And again, you know, this
Which
idea,
one of us is Ray Charles?
Fuck, I don't know. We can Rochambeau. I can be Stevie Wonder. That's fine. This is blind leading the blind out here. But you know, imagine how lost you would be if you were trying to observe yourself do the thing.
That's what I tried doing for a long time.
Right?
Yeah.
I want to learn by watching me. Mm-hmm. It's impossible, right?
I don't think... Okay, well, we can go real meta there. I don't think it's impossible. I just think it's incomplete. I think that, like, I try to do this often, actually, is observe my behavior as if it's not me. Because I think that, I mean, it sort of like goes Alan Watts' direction of like watching the watcher. Of like, see, like, what are my natural tendencies and what patterns do I find myself falling into?
But compared to what?
Compared to others that I've seen.
Others.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, yes. Absolutely.
So that is you cannot see your reflection without a mirror.
Yeah, for sure.
It's impossible. Okay. So you cannot see yourself unless there is some kind of or it's very limited.
Yep.
Right? Like, I can see part of me, but I cannot see the whole. I certainly can't see anything on my back.
I can't see behind my own face.
No. And so, you know, this is where that community element is important, because those people in the community become the mirror. Mm-hmm. And now we can have a true understanding, a full view of ourselves through that reflection that is given to us in others. And this becomes a very reciprocal, you know, it's the teaching student seeing and being seen, and the reflection of who I am is evident not in me emulating you and watching you move. It is in the interaction. Like, I can tell who I am by the way you interact with me. Mm-hmm. Right? I can tell if I'm being a fucking asshole. You're going to let me know real fast. Mm-hmm. You know, or if like, oh, this guy's... I will feel... Not only do I see it, but I can feel it. I can feel that energetic exchange that is being bounced back to me. And I don't think we go through the world looking at it that way, because most of the people that we interact with, we don't give a shit about. They're mostly NPCs that, you know, that signal passes right through them, right? But when we're in a real community with real people who have a vested interest, who do care, then that signal gets bounced off, and now I have information that I can do something with. Otherwise, it either, one of two things I think happens. Either we're completely alone and it goes off forever into space, and so I just sent this out and now I have no feedback.
You're just broadcasting.
I'm just broadcasting, but there's no, you know, there's no return signal. Or I am so inundated with so much everywhere, and most of it not mattering, which is, I think, where we're at in modern society today, that it's just too much static. Yep. And so there's information coming in, but I'm so overwhelmed I can't do anything with it, and it doesn't inform me of what I need to know, which is who I am and where I fit and where, you know, where my potential is. Right. And this idea of building a community, this thing that you have done so well, is something that I think is lacking. And what we're trying to do with Savage Gentlemen and building our league, which is the Facebook group, and then now extending that into these in-person events, the Legion. And then now we're in the process of bridging the gap where, okay, we've got the bookends. We've started in the extremes, right? But now we need to fill in, and this model that we talked about earlier is like, man, how do I build a bridge? I start on one side and I start on the other, and then as I connect the two, that ends up arcing, and so we actually lift up the middle. It compresses, and as we push together from both sides, it shoots up, and now we elevate what it is we're doing. And that's kind of the model that I'm trying to adopt, and something that you pointed out, and I will do this here in good faith because you it's a good bit of advice, is to just maybe reveal to people how much smaller this operation, this Savage Gentleman enterprise is actually not. You know what I mean? It's more of a popsicle stand. It's myself and Matt Winslow, my business partner, and then that's it. Like we are the company. It's just two guys. So when you look and you see stuff fall through the cracks, or it's like, man, the customer service, these guys need to get their customer service department in line.
You should contact HR.
Yeah. I'm gonna talk to HR. If everything you need to know about our company is that I'm the HR guy.
All right,
which is why this interview is happening.
Jesus.
Son of a gun, got him. And so the flaw often what we're doing is, one, I think not being as clear with the people who interact with our business, that like, no, yeah, the website looks great, yeah, they're awesome pictures, Matt's amazing photographer, I'm an okay model, I'm pretty cheap, so that's the route we went with. And so you get this idea of like, man, this is a huge company. They're moving thousands of units a day, and they've got teams of people. They've got a marketing team, and they've got like, no, it's just me and Matt. And so part of this community thing that we're talking about is realizing, well, if we're going to do anything with this that matters, right? We can stay closed off and we can keep it in tight, and means it goes nowhere and affects no one, or we can be open, we can let people in, and we can build this business, this idea, this movement, if I may be so bold, by growing the community. And the way that we're letting people in is literally letting people in to my fucking house, what I mean, and coming on a field trip with me and my son to pick apples with in his kindergarten class. And again, there's no obligation here. If anything, it's just proving the model, right? Mm-hmm. You've already helped more than I would have ever expected, and probably more than I deserve. And so, moving forward, it's choose. People can choose their own level of involvement. It's Project Mayhem.
That's right.
Right. And you asked me, you're like, man, how can I help with this thing that you're doing? How can I help you with this Legion? And I was like, I don't fucking care. You can be the CEO, the vice president, or you could, just say, dude, I've had enough of your stupid bearded face, and best of luck to you. Dealer's choice. But I do, really appreciate, you kind of just rolling the dice and taking the chance and going from hiking the Grand Canyon, in the morning, going 24 hours rim to rim, and then immediately jumping on the plane and showing up here to our event with no real deep understanding of what we were doing, other than like, yeah, I like Josh, he's pretty cool, this ought to be awesome, this ought to be okay, and willing to take that chance and share that openness, not just with me, but with the guys at the event, and now with the 3 listeners that we have
remaining. I know.
We're down to 3 now.
Yeah.
We started it more, but at this point we're yeah.
That's what I meant.
Okay.
Thank you. So, I've always been driven towards community.
Yeah.
And I both love and hate that word. And the reason I left Lifetime was because I didn't feel like I was making enough of an impact.
Yeah.
I felt like I was just a number. Like I said, I call it a sales job. It was never intended, it was never called that by the company.
Sure.
But that's what it felt like to me. And I left the company as regional education specialist. And I took that as to mean I was going to get to train trainers.
Yeah.
And increase my level of involvement. But then what it ended up happening was like, oh no, we want you to teach them how you sell so much training.
Sure.
And I was like, well, I give a fuck. And I don't know how to scale that.
Just do that, yeah.
Right? And they're like, yeah, well, but show them the method or whatever. And like, okay,
Give them the secret.
I tried and it didn't work. And I was like, okay, this isn't it. And then for better or for worse, I had a family event that brought me out to Arizona, and then through a series of, I'll call it luck or preparation or whatever, I ended up getting the teaching position and thinking to myself, like, finally, I'm out of the business world and I can get into education. And then I learned that, I mean, there are so many parallels.
Yeah.
That, I mean, it's disheartening to a degree. And one of the main things that we did there, sorry, not one of the main things, but one of the things that sticks out to me right now is we started to do proactive student outreach, where if a homework assignment was due on a Sunday, we would text or call them on a Friday, and we would remind them, hey, don't forget, you got homework due in 2 days. And when we beta tested it, it was extremely successful, and like outcomes through the roof.
Yeah.
And then they systematized it, and within 6 months, it was useless.
Yeah. So it was just a generic automated thing instead of like.
No, it wasn't. It still wasn't automated because we
Okay.
didn't have the technology at the
Okay.
time. So it was literally like me, or it was never me doing this.
Sure.
But we had instructors copying and pasting messages to their students.
So
Because you
basically, the authenticity was lost. Is where it broke down.
Yeah,
that's what.
And then it was like, you know, week after week of like, don't make me come after you, or like some generic message. It's like, okay, it just loses.
It's white noise. It's
yeah,
nothing.
Exactly. Too much static. Too much input. And desensitized.
Yep.
So I realized like that's not it. And then like all it became was like the bottom line, right? And I always had this underlying CrossFit thing where like these are people that I legitimately care about and who care about me and who want to see me succeed and get excited about my development. And I went all in on that thing. And to the people in my community who are probably listening to this, I could not be more grateful. And I absolutely, I'm astounded that I've been given this opportunity. And I think that it's absolutely wonderful. But what I've also created is a machine that requires over 400 bodies in order to sustain itself to the level that it's at.
Yeah.
And of those bodies, a lot of people don't get what we do and don't have any interest in getting what we do. And it's hard for me there is no work-life balance. There's no, again, life at the extremes.
Yeah.
It's hard to care as much as I want to care about all of those people
All of the
time. And my boss at the university asked me, if given the choice, would I rather go deeper or wider? And the answer is easy, deeper.
Always deeper.
Always, yeah. And I extended myself out to 3 locations, and for a very short time, kind of 4. We had a Hammer Central that didn't work itself out. And I ended up closing one of the gyms last year in December. So I kept all 3 of them open for 2.5 years. I'm now down to 2. This year has by far been the best. Like, I think I had to expand so that and then contract so that I could gain an appreciation and an understanding of how big was too big, resensitize myself, and get back to the things that mattered. And
it's periodization.
Yeah, exactly. Let's bring it back to fitness.
You know what I mean? You could take that and say, okay, well, I found the left and right limits, and this is where I stay. But, you know, who's to say that you couldn't, you know, that's a detraining cycle, right? And then you can expand a little bit more beyond what that original was, find the new limits based off of what you've learned, and then contract again a little bit to find, okay, this is the comfort zone. And so everyone wants to believe that a path is perfectly linear, and you know from training, you can't just add 5 pounds to your snatch every single day, indefinitely,
or week or month or
whatever. Pick a metric. Like there has to be some deload, and we're not good at deloading because that's not sexy. It doesn't. You know, I can't show you my deload bench press week on Instagram because, dude, I'm not putting up 3 wheels, and who wants to watch me bench press you know,
Body
lightweight, body weight. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that's interesting. I try to be extremely authentic in my social media. But even that, hyper stylized photos and verbose language.
Sure.
And like, yes, it's real. Yes, it's me. But
it's
also,
a facet.
like,
It's a
it's
snapshot.
just a piece. Yeah.
Yeah, you have to understand it's a snapshot. And I think people don't. They're like, you know, and if you, I mean, what is a movie if not a collection of snapshots? Right. But the problem is what people don't know is you've got, 100 frames that are missing between here and there. And so you're skipping over. And I think, if we can see it through that lens, then we can maintain the authenticity. But when the user doesn't understand that, then they get a very distorted understanding of the storyline of the movie.
So I think I mean, take things full circle, right?
Yeah, bring her home, James. You got this.
Well, there's a lot that you can do in the digital space.
Yep.
And in fact, I think that there are so many tools available that are remarkable. And I think that like we like to condemn social media, and we like to shit on everything. That just seems to be that's
especially
just
fitness.
popular culture right now.
I've heard that fitness is fucked from some.
Oh man, I love you boys.
I just had to go all in at this point.
Yeah,
they're not going to listen to my shit anyway.
You don't think so?
Fuck no.
What?
No chance.
Aw,
they got better things to do.
That's probably true.
Yeah, it's okay. It doesn't hurt my feelings. I love them regardless. Whether they listen to my podcast or they don't.
Yeah,
I don't
Daddy.
listen. I know. Daddy, you're the coolest, man.
No, but so there, like I use ChatGPT Pro. I use Grammarly Pro, and I use Speechify.
Okay.
So I pay for all of those services, and they are insanely beneficial to like my production, my development, like, and I'm just starting to get into all those tools, and like, because I'm trying to improve my communication skills to the community that I care about, because I want to let them know, I want to project the message, and let them know what's going on, and get them involved and get them excited, because what we're doing is so fucking cool.
Yeah.
I have the unique ability, because I get to see these people in person all the time, to hammer those messages home, and to get them to see like what that looks like in action. And I think it's really cool what you guys are doing, to be able to start putting on these events to bridge the gap between the digital and the live space, because I think that they're both extremely useful.
I don't think it needs to be an either or. It's a yes and. Right. And that is what we're trying to do. And the more I take steps forward to build this thing, the more I'm realizing this idea of community, in that, and I knew that I had no illusion that I could do this by myself, and nor did Matt. It was like, there's no way we can do this ourselves. So we've been slowly bringing in people. Jeremy Roadruck, who you met at the event, and some of you guys may have seen some of the things that he's posting, is absolutely brilliant guy, incredibly unassuming. And then you get that guy in a stance and get him moving, and all of a sudden you're like, I don't know if I want to get punched in the face by this dude. Like we had him hitting pads out there, and you're like, he just went from like dad bod to
he's a gentleman savage.
Yeah, he's a gentleman savage. That one is, so we've got other admin and moderators in our league that are brilliant in their own right, and huge contributors. And then it's just this slow build of like, man, the more I interact and the more I try to expand it, the more I realize, well, there's got to be more to support it underneath. I've got to have more structure.
Is that how you build a fire?
Thing. Yeah.
One that you want to last through the night?
Yeah.
Weird.
Yeah, weird.
We learned that this weekend too.
Yeah, and you've got to give it some room to breathe. You can't condense it and compact it all as tightly and squeeze it and try to control everything. Sometimes you got to make some space and allow a little bit of airflow in order for that fire to really catch and burn hot. And, you know, the thing that I'm trying to do is figure out, okay, what is the ratio? What is the fire, the triangle, right? For you survival people. And there's, we don't do a lot of the things at our events by accident. There's a decent amount of intention, I think, in the things that we do, because they translate so well. There's a lot of really useful metaphors and analogies in the activities, and I thought about just going in deep and having you describe the event, from your experience. I don't know that I want to do that though, because I think, again, it gives people an idea, but I like the mystique. I like a little bit of mystery, and I think that what makes it as effective is you don't know exactly what's going to happen. You don't know exactly what we're going to do. You have an idea, and I think this is what made it more profound. If I had given you the itinerary, I don't think you would have had the same experience knowing, the sequence, the activities, and exactly what they were. I have to give a good enough general idea to get your ass on a plane. And then aside from there, I have to, there's a level of trust where, I trust that you're going to be able to handle what we're going to do. And you trust that I'm going to be able to take care of you and steer and help steer guys, guide them to the desired outcome, which is, well, you tell me with the outcome. I'll put you right on the spot here.
Okay. Well, I'll start by saying the immediately when I hear men's group or anything like that, it sets off alarm bells.
Sure.
And I'm like, this is bullshitty.
Yeah.
I don't associate with these kinds of people.
Yep.
I'm not a self-help kind of person. Even though like I love the space, like, well, I think we talked a little bit about it. It's like it's self-development, which I'm very much interested in.
Sure.
But like that's for myself, and I don't need to necessarily share that with anybody. And so like I came into this again. We mentioned earlier. I was like, hey, this is going to be really good for you guys. And what I found was, that I'm drawing a blank to how I want to say this. But it's something along the lines of, it comes back to what I was saying earlier of like, I have something to give, and I need a voice to share that. But I'm simultaneously teaching and learning, and it's easy to overlook the amount of receiving that I give
that you're capable
that I'm
of.
capable of.
Yeah.
And I'm not.
And we're not good at receiving.
No, I'm not comfortable with it.
We never want to take in more than we're putting out.
Exactly.
And I think that becomes problematic.
Yeah. And so, but I think that, like we had talked around the fire one of those nights, the fact that we are concerned with that concept of I don't want to take more than I give means that we probably don't have to worry about it, because we're the type of people who, like, if everyone operated in that way, then man, it's just incredible. It's the contribution that a community requires.
And so that's the boom. That is the direction that we're trying to go, is like, okay, how can we build something that allows men to make that contribution, and in turn allows them to receive what they need. And sometimes they don't know what they need, and they need, 9 other guys standing around to to reveal that, and that's what it takes. And I think that's the way that it's always been, and we've just lost sight of that. So trying to move the direction there and open up that space for those who know that there's more potential but aren't quite sure where and how to find it. I think the answer is in building a community.
Well, I think that bird is telling us that it's about time to wrap this up here.
Yeah. If people want to sign up and go work out and do fitness things with you, or they want to see your mushroom pictures or whatever shit you do on your Instagram.
You know what?
Yeah.
I'm not gonna fucking spoon feed anyone.
Don't do it.
Like,
yes.
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Fuck yeah. I never want to tell people either. Like, figure it out.
You've
nerds.
mentioned my name multiple times.
If
We've
you
mentioned my
can't find-
business multiple times. If at this point you can't figure out where I am, then you don't deserve to
You're
find
not
me.
ready. Well,
We
no,
don't
no,
have.
you, just,
Hey,
you don't deserve. You're just not
okay.
ready. You're
Okay,
not ready
just
yet.
not ready
You're
yet.
not there.
Yeah.
Man, we're fucking elitist assholes.
I mean, we had to come full circle somehow.
We did have to get
There's
back
no
there.
signs on my building that
Nice.
tells us where. And
Well, where you got that from?
I had this building first.
Okay, they're jocking your style. James Ellis of Hammer
Josh Tyler.
CrossFit. Yeah,
You
dude, you're
savage gentleman.
you're a cool daddy. I don't care what anybody else says, and man, I appreciate you taking the time for this. I appreciate you coming out and sharing and exchanging.
First of many.
Yeah. Oh, fuck yeah.
Yeah.
Fuck yeah. Because we're signing contracts after this. You're,
I got a plane to catch.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'm sad. I am sad to watch you leave, but I am excited for your journeys ahead. So
You hate to see me go, but you
I'd
love to watch
you
me
leave.
leave.
That's
Yeah.
right. So for you guys, thanks for sticking this out. It was a journey. It always is. And we'll see you on the next one whenever that happens to be. Cheers.
All right. Cheers.